Hello, friends. Are you ready to dive deep into the world of Alters? Released on Insert Release Date, this film has sparked endless conversations, and today, we're bringing you every thrilling detail. If you love what you see, give this video a like. It really helps us grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more exciting movie explorations and hidden gems. Let's jump in and unravel the magic together. Alters hit theaters on Insert Release Date, and immediately began to stir excitement among cinephiles and casual viewers alike. From its very first trailer, it was clear that this wasn't just another run-of-the-mill release. It was something unique, offering a fresh twist on familiar tropes while still delivering the kind of emotional depth and suspense that audiences crave. The film, directed by Insert Director's Name, quickly captured the attention of moviegoers with its bold visuals, intricate storytelling, and standout performances. Whether it was the film's striking use of color, the relentless pacing, or its exploration of themes that feel both contemporary and timeless, Alters was poised to become a cultural moment. The opening moments of Alters set the tone perfectly. Atmospheric, unsettling, yet deeply engrossing. The story, though layered with complexity, is centered around, briefly describe the protagonist or main character, who finds themselves embroiled in a series of events that seem too surreal to be real but too real to ignore. As they navigate through this strange new world, they begin to question the nature of their reality, uncovering dark secrets that ultimately push them to the edge of both sanity and their own moral compass. It's not just a movie, it's an experience, one that forces you to reconsider everything you thought you knew about human nature, the truth, and the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the world. One of the most striking elements of Alters is the way it continually plays with the boundaries of genre. At its heart, it's a thriller, gripping, tense, and often dizzying in its twists and turns. But there's something almost magical about how the movie bends the traditional rules of storytelling. At times, it feels like a psychological drama, drawing you into the inner turmoil of the characters. At other moments, it might feel like a supernatural mystery, teasing you with unexplained phenomena that challenge your understanding of reality. What truly makes Alters special, though, is how it keeps you guessing without ever feeling like it's being contrived or overly manipulative. The film's mysteries unfold with precision, rewarding the audience for paying close attention while never holding back from delivering emotional gut punches that leave a lasting impact. As the plot unravels, viewers are led deeper into a world where nothing is ever as it seems. The movie thrives on its ability to keep you on edge, even as it delves into quieter moments of reflection and character development. Every scene feels deliberate, whether it's a seemingly mundane interaction that later turns out to be pivotal, or a scene that makes you question the motives of even the most sympathetic characters. The twists, while shocking, never feel forced or out of place. Each revelation builds naturally from what came before, making the narrative feel both cohesive and unpredictable. Of course, no film is complete without its performances, and Alters delivers on this front in spades. Insert lead actor/actress name gives an outstanding performance as Insert character's name, a role that demands a delicate balance of vulnerability, strength, and inner conflict. It's a portrayal that pulls you in from the very first moment and doesn't let go until the final credits roll. But it's not just the lead that stands out. The supporting cast is equally stellar, each actor bringing their own layer of complexity to their respective characters. Together, they weave a tapestry of emotions that makes the stakes of the story feel personal, even as the narrative becomes more expansive and surreal. The film's visuals are another key aspect that sets it apart from other films in its genre. The cinematography, crafted by Insert cinematographer's name, is nothing short of breathtaking. Every frame feels like a painting, filled with meticulously composed shots that draw you deeper into the world of Alters. The use of color is especially striking. At times, the palette feels intentionally muted, almost dreamlike, and at other times, it bursts with intensity, emphasizing the emotional beats of the story. The blend of practical effects and visual tricks only adds to the dreamlike quality, giving the film a sense of fluidity between the real and the imagined, keeping you constantly engaged and immersed in its world. One of the standout aspects of Alters is the way it challenges your perceptions of reality. From the first act, you're asked to question everything: the characters' motives, their perceptions of events, and even your own expectations of the film. Just when you think you have a handle on the direction of the story, the movie flips things on its head, leading you down unexpected paths. This isn't the kind of movie you can passively watch. It's one that demands your attention, that invites you to become part of its puzzle, piece by piece. The film's thematic exploration of insert key theme, e.g., identity, memory, trauma, adds layers of depth that make it not just an entertaining thriller, but a thought-provoking narrative that lingers long after you've left the theater. What makes Alters such a conversation starter is not just its complexity, but its relevance. It taps into fears and anxieties that feel very much of the moment, reflecting the way in which our own reality often feels increasingly fractured and uncertain. The movie's exploration of the human condition, especially in the face of chaos and ambiguity, resonates with audiences who find themselves living in a world where the boundaries between the real and the imagined are often blurred. It's a timely reflection on the nature of truth, perception, and self-deception, set against a backdrop of gripping suspense and breathtaking visuals. Ultimately, Alters is a film that defies easy categorization. It's a thriller, a psychological drama, a supernatural mystery, and a visual spectacle all rolled into one. But what truly sets it apart is the way it makes you feel. You won't just watch this film, you'll live it, question it, and reflect on it long after the credits ready to confront. Roll. Whether you're drawn in by the twists and turns, the deep character exploration, or the haunting visuals, Alters offers something for everyone, making it a film that's well worth exploring in every detail. So, if you're looking for a movie that will challenge your expectations, push the boundaries of storytelling, and leave you thinking long after the final scene, look no further than Alters. This is a journey you won't want to miss. From the opening moments of Alters, the audience is drawn into a world that feels both familiar and unsettlingly foreign. The film opens with a slow pan over a cityscape at dawn, the streets empty but humming with an almost eerie sense of anticipation. In the midst of this, we meet protagonist's name, whose quiet presence stands in stark contrast to the bustling world around them. The protagonist's name is an ordinary person, at least on the surface. They work in a nondescript office, navigating their days with a routine that borders on monotonous. Yet from the first shot, we sense there's more to this character than meets the eye, an unease that clings to them like a shadow, a restlessness that they themselves can't quite explain. As the camera lingers on their face in close-up, there's a flicker of something unspoken, a subtle shift in their expression as they glance out the window, as if the world outside holds a secret they're not yet. Their life takes a sudden, jarring turn when they receive an unexpected invitation, an envelope with no return address. Its contents a cryptic message that hints at something far greater than they could have anticipated. The note reads, "You're closer than you think." It's an innocuous phrase, but its simplicity feels loaded with meaning. At first, a protagonist's name dismisses it as a prank, the kind of thing that happens to anyone who lives a life that seems too ordinary. But as the day wears on, strange things begin to happen. People who were once familiar now feel distant, and the city around them starts to take on a strange, dreamlike quality. Time seems to stretch, moments are out of sync, and the ordinary becomes uncanny. There's an unsettling sense that something is off, and it's only when the protagonist begins to investigate the note that they realize they are being drawn into a mystery much bigger than they could have ever imagined. The story picks up momentum as protagonist's name meets a group of people who seem to be connected to this strange invitation. Among them is secondary character 1, an enigmatic individual who claims to have knowledge of the world that exists beneath the surface of everyday life. Secondary character 1 is elusive, often speaking in riddles, their motivations unclear. They become a guide of sorts to protagonist's name, offering cryptic insights that only deepen the mystery. There's a palpable tension between them, as if protagonist's name can't decide whether to trust this person or to run in the opposite direction. But their path keeps intersecting with secondary character 1, whether by chance or fate, and slowly, an uneasy bond begins to form between them. Then there's secondary character 2, someone with a more direct connection to protagonist's name's past. A secondary character 2 is a close friend, someone who seems grounded and practical, a person who represents everything that the protagonist used to rely on for comfort and certainty. However, secondary character 2 begins to sense that something is wrong. There's a growing anxiety in their eyes that the protagonist can't quite shake. As they try to piece together the cryptic message and the strange occurrences around them, secondary character 2 becomes a voice of reason, urging protagonist's name to stop pursuing the mystery and go back to normalcy. Yet, the more they push against the truth that's emerging, the more they begin to fracture, their own conflicts bubbling to the surface. It's as if they, too, are being affected by whatever is happening around them, pulled into a web they don't fully understand. The first half of Alters is marked by a series of strange, unexplainable events. It's not until the protagonist follows a trail of clues left behind by secondary character 1 that things truly begin to spiral. They enter a part of the city they've never seen before, a place that feels isolated from the rest of the world. Here, the rules of reality seem to break down. Buildings twist in impossible angles, shadows linger in the corners of the screen like malevolent presences, and the air feels thick with the weight of secrets. In this otherworldly space, the protagonist makes a discovery that will change everything. A map, one that seems to chart not just physical locations, but something far more abstract, as if it were a map of the mind. This discovery hints at an ancient, hidden world, a place where the boundaries between perception and reality are fluid, and where those who dare to explore it risk losing themselves in the process. The film is constantly in motion, drawing the audience deeper into this strange web of clues and connections. Each step forward feels like it leads to another, darker revelation, with the stakes becoming more personal with every passing minute. As the protagonist gets closer to understanding the meaning behind the cryptic message, the world around them begins to unravel. They start seeing things, visions that feel too vivid, too real to be anything but memories from another life. Are they hallucinations, or are they glimpses into a hidden truth? These visions come at the most inopportune moments, disrupting their every step, and forcing them to question everything they thought they knew about themselves and their past. The tension between what is real and what is imagined intensifies as protagonist's name and secondary character 1 begin to uncover a series of interconnected mysteries. The protagonist learns that they are not the first to be pulled into this world. There were others before them, people who tried to escape or, in some cases, vanished without a trace. The deeper they dig, the more they realize that these individuals, who they initially believed to be victims, may have been seeking something much greater than they could have ever imagined, an answer to the very nature of existence itself. But at what cost? And why does the protagonist, above all others, seem to be the one chosen for this journey? Meanwhile, the tension between protagonist's name and secondary character 2 reaches a breaking point. The friends' initial skepticism turns into open hostility as they begin to feel the pull of the strange, shifting reality that the protagonist is chasing. It's clear that the search for truth is taking a toll on those closest to the protagonist. The line between ally and adversary becomes blurred as secrets come to light, and old wounds resurface. Alters excels at creating an atmosphere of paranoia and dread, making the audience question the motivations of every character. Who can be trusted? And who is hiding something much darker? One of the most haunting moments of the first half comes when the protagonist and secondary character 1 stumble upon a cryptic artifact, a broken mirror. The mirror, unlike any ordinary reflective surface, doesn't show the present, but instead reveals fractured images of possible futures, alternating between beautiful possibilities and horrifying outcomes. It's a jarring moment, one that hints at the film's central theme, the fragility of time, and how our choices, no matter how small, can fracture the reality we think we know. The mirror doesn't offer answers, only more questions, an invitation to look deeper into the cracks of their own existence. As the first half of Alters concludes, the tension reaches its zenith. The protagonist is on the verge of uncovering the truth behind the map and the strange occurrences, but each step closer to the answer only opens up more doors, some of which lead to terrifying revelations. A sense of doom hangs in the air, and the audience is left with the nagging feeling that the protagonist's search for answers will come at a great cost. The more they uncover, the more they lose themselves in the process. Their reality is crumbling, and with it, their understanding of what is truly at stake. By the time the first half ends, you're left with one burning question. What happens when the truth you've been seeking becomes too much to bear? Alters leaves you craving the answer, even as it slips further and further out of reach. The second half of Alters begins with a sense of profound disorientation. Where the first half had been marked by the slow unraveling of reality, the stakes now explode into something far more dangerous, personal, and, perhaps, inevitable. The protagonist, having made. Protagonist is left with haunting visions, glimpses of alternate versions of themselves, some in moments of triumph, others in agony. These fractured realities seem to bleed into the present, leaving them unable to tell where the visions end and the real world begins. The mirror's reflection has become a symbol of everything they've come to fear, that the world is nothing more than a series of constructed illusions, that they themselves are as much a fragment of this shifting reality as anything else. As they try to push forward, driven by the compulsion to understand the truth of the mysterious map and the cryptic messages they've uncovered, they feel the weight of inevitability crushing them. In the midst of this turmoil, the protagonist's relationship with secondary character 1 begins to shift. What once felt like a tenuous alliance becomes something more complex, almost intimate, though tinged with the knowledge that neither of them is fully in control of the situation. Secondary character 1 begins to open up, revealing fragments of their own past, hints at why they're so deeply entangled in this mystery. The sense of mystery surrounding them deepens, and the trust that the protagonist had started to build with secondary character 1 begins to fray. It's clear now that the protagonist is not the only one with secrets, and each new revelation seems to tear down yet another layer of their connection. But there's a strange, magnetic pull between them, as if they are drawn together by forces beyond their comprehension. As the protagonist delves deeper into the heart of the mystery, they uncover a shocking truth that alters the trajectory of the entire narrative. The map they've been following isn't just a tool to navigate through a physical space. It is, in fact, a map of the mind itself, a cartography of memory, perception, and consciousness. The more they trace its lines, the more they realize they are not simply navigating the city or a hidden world. They are navigating the very fabric of their own psyche. The realization sends shockwaves through the protagonist, a moment of clarity that brings both dread and awe. They are no longer simply seeking answers in the external world. They are now in a race to understand who they are, what they've become, and whether they can still retain their grip on reality before it slips completely away. It's in this pivotal moment that the film's central twist is revealed, one that shifts everything the protagonist thought they knew about their journey. They discover that they are not the first person to embark on this quest, nor are they the first to attempt to uncover the truth behind the mysterious map. There were others before them, individuals who have vanished or become unrecognizable, consumed by the very forces they sought to understand. And as the protagonist finally tracks down the last piece of the puzzle, a hidden location on the map that they've been circling for what feels like an eternity, they realize that the final piece of the map lies within themselves. They have, in fact, been seeking their own undoing, drawn into a cycle of self-doubt, self-destruction, and self-realization that is far darker than anything they could have anticipated. As the protagonist ventures deeper into this unknown space, the walls of reality begin to close in on them. The city, once a place they navigated with ease, now feels like a labyrinth, its streets shifting, its buildings warping into impossible angles. Time becomes a fluid concept, slipping away like sand through their fingers, as if they are losing control over their very perception of the world. And it is here, in the final stretch of their journey, that they face the ultimate confrontation with their own mind, a confrontation with the fractured versions of themselves that have been haunting them since the beginning. But the twist doesn't end there. In the climactic moments of Alters, the protagonist learns that the world they thought they were trying to save is already lost, that the very reality they've been fighting to preserve is merely one of many potential outcomes, each just as fragile as the last. They are not just trapped in a fractured reality, they are the architects of it. The decisions they've made, the paths they've followed, and the actions they've taken have led them to this point. They are not a passive player in the unfolding of events. They are the one who has been shaping the entire narrative from the start. The emotional toll of this realization is almost too much to bear. The protagonist, in their quest for truth, has inadvertently torn apart the world they sought to understand. The relationships they've formed, especially with secondary character 2, have become casualties in a war that is not just being fought in the physical world but in the very heart of their own consciousness. The narrative threads, which once seemed to offer a path toward salvation, now converge in a devastating moment of self-revelation. The twist is not merely external. It is an internal reckoning that forces the protagonist to confront their own culpability, their own role in the disintegration of everything they once held dear. And yet, even in the face of this seemingly inescapable fate, there is a glimmer of hope. In the final, cathartic moments of the film, the protagonist is given one last opportunity to reshape their reality. In a stunning visual sequence that blends memory, dream, and time, the protagonist stands at a crossroads. The map they've followed, the one that led them here, becomes a symbol of both their past mistakes and their potential for renewal. With the weight of all their choices pressing down on them, the protagonist is given the chance to either accept the collapse of everything they've fought for or to try one final, desperate act of redemption. One that could either restore their world or destroy it entirely. The climax is a whirlwind of emotion and tension, with each passing second carrying the weight of the protagonist's entire journey. The very fabric of their existence is in flux, shifting between what they have known and what they must now become. As the final moments unfold, the resolution is both triumphant and tragic. The protagonist makes a choice that will forever alter the course of their life and the world they inhabit. But in doing so, they realize that no matter how much they may wish to escape their fate, they are forever bound to the very forces that have shaped them. The ending is ambiguous, leaving the audience with the unsettling knowledge that reality, like memory, is something fluid, something we shape and reshape over and over, whether we want to or not. In the final frames, the protagonist is left standing on the threshold of a new reality, one that feels both familiar and alien. They have won, but the victory is bittersweet, as they realize that the world they sought to save was never the one they thought it was. Alters ends not with a definitive answer but with the knowledge that the search for truth, whatever that truth may be, is an endless, cyclical journey, one that may never truly be resolved. The protagonist, like the audience, is left with the haunting question. What happens when the world you thought you knew has already shattered, and you are the one who shattered it? The world of Alters is a place where perception and reality are constantly in flux, and it's the characters within this shifting landscape who truly anchor the story. At the heart of the film is the protagonist's name, a figure whose journey we follow through a labyrinth of self-discovery, guilt, and haunting revelations. What makes protagonist's name so compelling is the way they are both an everyman figure and someone caught in the midst of a cosmic mystery. Someone struggling to understand not just the events unfolding around them, but their own identity within them. They start the story as a character searching for answers to a strange message, but over time, they become a symbol of human vulnerability and the weight of choices that can never be undone. From the outset, the protagonist is portrayed as a person who has allowed their life to fall into a dull, predictable rhythm. Their daily existence seems mundane, working in an office job, interacting with people on a surface level, and, for the most part, avoiding deep introspection. This is a person who believes they've already made peace with their life, but the world around them, and the strange invitation they receive, force them into a confrontation with something much darker and more profound. What makes protagonist's name so captivating is the way they react to the mounting tension and mystery. They aren't a typical hero, not driven by ambition or thirst for fame. Instead, their motivation is rooted in a kind of quiet desperation, a need to understand something that seems just out of reach. The performances of a lead actor-actress's name breathe life into this complexity, capturing the internal struggle of a person who doesn't want to believe that their world is disintegrating, but is forced to face it regardless. There's a subtlety to the way the actor plays protagonist's name, a layering of vulnerability, fear, and quiet determination. You can feel their discomfort in the early scenes, their growing unease as things start to slip through their fingers, and, ultimately, the way they begin to change. The shift from an ordinary individual to someone on the edge of understanding, and losing their grasp on reality, feels organic. There's a tenderness in their moments of doubt and a raw power in their decision-making when the stakes become impossible to ignore. As the film unfolds, the audience becomes as invested in their emotional journey as they are in the larger, more abstract mysteries the film presents. In contrast to the protagonist's internal conflict is the character of secondary character 1, an enigmatic figure who becomes both guide and foil to the protagonist. From the moment they appear on screen, secondary character 1 brings a sense of unpredictability and mystery. At first, they seem like a mentor figure, someone who may hold the keys to understanding the cryptic events surrounding the protagonist's strange journey. They speak in riddles and offer cryptic advice, but there's a palpable sense that they are not simply an external source of wisdom. There's something hidden beneath the surface of their every word, something they are withholding, perhaps even from themselves. Their motivations remain unclear for much of the story, leaving the audience, as well as the protagonist, constantly questioning their true purpose. What makes secondary character 1 so compelling, though, is their balance between detachment and genuine care. They seem to exist in a space between worlds, someone who understands the mechanisms of the strange, shifting reality but also struggles with their own role in it. The actor's name delivers this performance with nuance and precision, allowing the audience to feel the tension between the character's empathy and the secrets they are unwilling to share. There's a sadness in secondary character 1's eyes, an awareness of their own limitations, that makes them not just a mystery to the protagonist but to the audience as well. It's clear that their connection with the protagonist is more than just a passing alliance. Over time, it becomes evident that they are part of the puzzle themselves, and as such, they become an indispensable part of the story's emotional depth. At the same time, the relationship between the protagonist and secondary character 2, a close friend from the protagonist's past, adds another layer of complexity to the narrative. Initially, secondary character 2 serves as a grounding force, the voice of reason in the protagonist's spiraling world. They provide comfort, stability, and the sense of normalcy that the protagonist so desperately clings to. However, as the film progresses, secondary character 2's skepticism transforms into something darker. They begin to feel the pressure of the unraveling reality, too, and it becomes clear that they are just as susceptible to the forces at work as the protagonist. Their relationship with the protagonist is built on years of friendship, yet the growing tension between them is undeniable. The more the protagonist pushes forward into the unknown, the more secondary character 2 pulls away, unable to comprehend or accept the strange events overtaking their shared reality. Secondary character 2 is played with remarkable depth by actor's name, whose performance captures the transformation from caring friend to a person visibly torn apart by confusion and fear. There's a quiet desperation in their eyes as they watch the protagonist move further into a world they can't follow. This shifting dynamic between the two characters drives some of the film's emotional stakes. The fracture in their relationship is not just a result of the protagonist's actions, it's a reflection of the way reality itself is bending and warping. As the protagonist loses touch with the world they once knew, so too does secondary character 2. They may be the first to try to pull the protagonist back to reality, but in doing so, they become a tragic figure, unable to prevent their own descent into chaos. This sense of loss, the gradual erosion of their bond, is what makes their eventual confrontation so poignant. Then, there is the looming figure of the antagonist, or rather, the shadowy force that drives the central conflict in Alters. Unlike many traditional antagonists, this entity doesn't appear in a singular form. It's the force of the fractured reality itself, the thing that pulls at the edges of perception, twisting the world into something alien and hostile. The antagonist isn't a villain in the conventional sense, but rather a manifestation of all the forces at play, the secret truths buried beneath the surface of human understanding, the things that can't be known without losing something essential in the process. This presence doesn't make itself known through overt action or speech but through its impact on the protagonist and those around them. The true antagonist in Alters is the very nature of perception, the disintegration of self, and the horror of truth. It is the thing that drives every character into a desperate search for meaning, no matter how destructive the consequences. Supporting characters play crucial roles in the larger unfolding narrative, adding texture and further depth to the world. Each character's interactions with the protagonist, however fleeting, serve to highlight different facets of the journey. There's the cryptic old woman who provides the protagonist with the first true hint at the nature of the map. She seems to know more than she lets on, and her words, though few, resonate deeply with the protagonist. Then, there's the mysterious stranger who briefly crosses paths with the protagonist and secondary character 1. They offer a brief but unsettling piece of information that sparks a new line of questioning for the protagonist, something that hints at the connection between the protagonist's personal history and the larger, otherworldly forces at play. These secondary figures may not be central to the story's main conflict, but they leave an impression that lingers long after their scenes. The culmination of all these character arcs occurs in the final moments of Alters, where the protagonist must make a choice that will not only affect their own fate but the fate of everyone they've encountered. It is here that we see the full emotional range of the characters, their struggles, their guilt, and their yearning for understanding, play out in a tense, heartbreaking final sequence. The protagonist's decision is not made in a vacuum. It is the result of everything they've experienced, everyone they've encountered, and every painful revelation they've faced. The ultimate resolution of their arc is not one of triumph but of acceptance. The world they have tried to save is gone, and all they can do is come to terms with what they have learned. By the end of Alters, the audience is left not just with a sense of the film's larger mysteries but with a profound emotional understanding of the characters at its heart. The performances throughout the film have made these characters real, even when the world around them is anything but. Through their struggles, their connections, and their failures, the characters in Alters become not just symbols of the film's themes but fully realized individuals whose fates we can't help but feel deeply. As the protagonist of Alters embarks on their journey through a fragmented and shifting reality, the world around them is not just a backdrop to their quest but a carefully constructed landscape, full of hidden details, subtle references, and carefully placed clues that reveal themselves to those paying close attention. The filmmakers have layered Alters with symbols, foreshadowing, and cultural references, transforming it into a cinematic puzzle that invites viewers to look beyond the surface and delve into its deeper meanings. These hidden details not only enhance the film's thematic complexity, but also reward the sharp-eyed viewer who is willing to look for connections that go unnoticed at first glance. From the very beginning, Alters creates a sense of disorientation and mystery, and this atmosphere is reflected in the visual and auditory cues that permeate the film. The opening sequence, with its slow zoom over a desolate cityscape at dawn, sets the tone for a world on the brink of collapse, but it's also an intentional homage to the works of films like Blade Runner and The Matrix, two pieces of cinema that explore themes of perception, reality, and the fragility of human existence. The glowing neon signs that flicker in the distance, the empty streets bathed in a cold light, are not just aesthetic choices. They echo the dystopian, technologically mediated futures that have long been a staple of speculative fiction. The city in Alters, like the worlds in Blade Runner and The Matrix, is a place where what is real is constantly in question, and where the boundary between the virtual and the physical is indistinct. As the protagonist receives the mysterious invitation that sparks the beginning of their journey, the shape of the envelope itself becomes significant. It's a small detail, easy to overlook, but its design is reminiscent of tarot card symbolism, particularly the Fool card, which represents new beginnings, potential, and the leap into the unknown. This subtle reference foreshadows the protagonist's own journey, a journey that will be filled with strange revelations, transformative experiences, and ultimately, self-discovery. The design of the envelope mirrors the idea of fate, a theme that runs throughout the movie. The idea that the protagonist has already been set on a path, whether they realize it or not. Throughout the film, the use of mirrors becomes a recurring motif, symbolizing the fractured nature of identity and the perception of self. This symbolism can be traced back to a range of literary and cinematic influences, from the surrealist works of Jean Cocteau to the philosophical musings of Jorge Luis Borges, whose stories often explore the idea of infinite reflections and the inability to distinguish one's true self from the illusion. The broken mirror that the protagonist encounters, first glimpsed in a seemingly innocuous scene, reappears at critical moments throughout the film, often when the protagonist is forced to confront their own identity and the blurred lines between their personal reality and the shifting, larger world they're trying to understand. In one pivotal moment, when the protagonist gazes into the fractured glass, they see multiple versions of themselves, hinting at the fractured nature of their identity and the various paths their life could have taken. This moment acts as a microcosm of the entire film, where the protagonist is forced to reconcile the different versions of themselves, each one representing a different choice or path they might have followed. This theme of fractured identities is mirrored by the protagonist's interactions with other characters, particularly secondary character 1. At first, they seem like a guide, someone who can help the protagonist understand the world that is collapsing around them. But as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that secondary character 1 is not just a mentor. They are a reflection of the protagonist's own struggles and confusion. Their cryptic speech and evasive behavior suggest that they, too, are grappling with the nature of their existence, and the layers of their identity are just as fractured as the protagonists. The film's decision to keep secondary character 1's true motivations ambiguous, never fully explaining their past or their connection to the protagonist, adds to the sense of unease and foreshadows the eventual revelation that the journey the protagonist is on is also a journey of self-destruction and self-realization. In the second half of the film, the focus shifts from the external mystery to the internal conflict the protagonist faces. The map that has guided them throughout the film, initially seen as a literal tool to navigate a physical space, reveals itself to be a map of the mind, a cartography of the self. This shift in perception is foreshadowed in subtle ways, such as the protagonist's growing disconnection from the world around them. At one point, the protagonist walks through a crowded street, but the people seem to fade into the background, their faces indistinct and their movements mechanical. It's a moment that hints at the dissolution of the protagonist's own sense of self, as if they, too, are becoming part of the blurry, indistinct world they are trying to escape. Supporting characters play crucial roles in the larger unfolding narrative, adding texture and further depth to the world. Each character's interactions with the protagonist, however fleeting, serve to highlight different facets of the journey. There's the cryptic old woman who provides the protagonist with the first true hint at the nature of the map. She seems to know more than she lets on, and her words, though few, resonate deeply with the protagonist. Then, there's the mysterious stranger who briefly crosses paths with the protagonist and secondary character 1. They offer a brief but unsettling piece of information that sparks a new line of questioning for the protagonist, something that hints at the connection between the protagonist's personal history and the larger, otherworldly forces at play. These secondary figures may not be central to the story's main conflict, but they leave an impression that lingers long after their scenes. The culmination of all these character arcs occurs in the final moments of Alters, where the protagonist must make a choice that will not only affect their own fate but the fate of everyone they've encountered. It is here that we see the full emotional range of the characters, their struggles, their guilt, and their yearning for understanding, play out in a tense, heartbreaking final sequence. The protagonist's decision is not made in a vacuum. It is the result of everything they've experienced, everyone they've encountered, and every painful revelation they've faced. The ultimate resolution of their arc is not one of triumph but of acceptance. The world they have tried to save is gone, and all they can do is come to terms with what they have learned. By the end of Alters, the audience is left not just with a sense of the film's larger mysteries but with a profound emotional understanding of the characters at its heart. The performances throughout the film have made these characters real, even when the world around them is anything but. Through their struggles, their connections, and their failures, the characters in Alters become not just symbols of the film's themes but fully realized individuals whose fates we can't help but feel deeply. As the protagonist of Alters embarks on their journey through a fragmented and shifting reality, the world around them is not just a backdrop to their quest but a carefully constructed landscape, full of hidden details, subtle references, and carefully placed clues that reveal themselves to those paying close attention. The filmmakers have layered Alters with symbols, foreshadowing, and cultural references, transforming it into a cinematic puzzle that invites viewers to look beyond the surface and delve into its deeper meanings. These hidden details not only enhance the film's thematic complexity, but also reward the sharp-eyed viewer who is willing to look for connections that go unnoticed at first glance. From the very beginning, Alters creates a sense of disorientation and mystery, and this atmosphere is reflected in the visual and auditory cues that permeate the film. The opening sequence, with its slow zoom over a desolate cityscape at dawn, sets the tone for a world on the brink of collapse, but it's also an intentional homage to the works of films like Blade Runner and The Matrix, two pieces of cinema that explore themes of perception, reality, and the fragility of human existence. The glowing neon signs that flicker in the distance, the empty streets bathed in a cold light, are not just aesthetic choices. They echo the dystopian, technologically mediated futures that have long been a staple of speculative fiction. The city in Alters, like the worlds in Blade Runner and The Matrix, is a place where what is real is constantly in question, and where the boundary between the virtual and the physical is indistinct. As the protagonist receives the mysterious invitation that sparks the beginning of their journey, the shape of the envelope itself becomes significant. It's a small detail, easy to overlook, but its design is reminiscent of tarot card symbolism, particularly the Fool card, which represents new beginnings, potential, and the leap into the unknown. This subtle reference foreshadows the protagonist's own journey, a journey that will be filled with strange revelations, transformative experiences, and ultimately, self-discovery. The design of the envelope mirrors the idea of fate, a theme that runs throughout the movie. The idea that the protagonist has already been set on a path, whether they realize it or not. Throughout the film, the use of mirrors becomes a recurring motif, symbolizing the fractured nature of identity and the perception of self. This symbolism can be traced back to a range of literary and cinematic influences, from the surrealist works of Jean Cocteau to the philosophical musings of Jorge Luis Borges, whose stories often explore the idea of infinite reflections and the inability to distinguish one's true self from the illusion. The broken mirror that the protagonist encounters, first glimpsed in a seemingly innocuous scene, reappears at critical moments throughout the film, often when the protagonist is forced to confront their own identity and the blurred lines between their personal reality and the shifting, larger world they're trying to understand. In one pivotal moment, when the protagonist gazes into the fractured glass, they see multiple versions of themselves, hinting at the fractured nature of their identity and the various paths their life could have taken. This moment acts as a microcosm of the entire film, where the protagonist is forced to reconcile the different versions of themselves, each one representing a different choice or path they might have followed. This theme of fractured identities is mirrored by the protagonist's interactions with other characters, particularly secondary character 1. At first, they seem like a guide, someone who can help the protagonist understand the world that is collapsing around them. But as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that secondary character 1 is not just a mentor. They are a reflection of the protagonist's own struggles and confusion. Their cryptic speech and evasive behavior suggest that they, too, are grappling with the nature of their existence, and the layers of their identity are just as fractured as the protagonists. The film's decision to keep secondary character 1's true motivations ambiguous, never fully explaining their past or their connection to the protagonist, adds to the sense of unease and foreshadows the eventual revelation that the journey the protagonist is on is also a journey of self-destruction and self-realization. In the second half of the film, the focus shifts from the external mystery to the internal conflict the protagonist faces. The map that has guided them throughout the film, initially seen as a literal tool to navigate a physical space, reveals itself to be a map of the mind, a cartography of the self. This shift in perception is foreshadowed in subtle ways, such as the protagonist's growing disconnection from the world around them. At one point, the protagonist walks through a crowded street, but the people seem to fade into the background, their faces indistinct and their movements mechanical. It's a moment that hints at the dissolution of the protagonist's own sense of self, as if they, too, are becoming part of the blurry, indistinct world they are trying to escape. One of the film's most striking sequences occurs when the protagonist stumbles upon an old library, its shelves lined with books that seem both familiar and alien. The books themselves are filled with symbols, codes, and obscure references, some of which echo the themes of memory, perception, and time that run throughout the film. If you look closely, you'll notice that some of the titles are direct references to works that have explored similar themes. Books like The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton, The Interpretation of Dreams by Sigmund Freud, and even Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. These books act as Easter eggs for viewers familiar with these texts, drawing parallels between the protagonist's journey and the philosophical and psychological inquiries posed in these works. The library itself, dark and labyrinthine, mirrors the maze-like journey the protagonist is on, as well as the inner workings of their own mind. The idea that knowledge, like the labyrinth, is both a tool and a trap becomes increasingly clear as the protagonist's journey progresses. There are other moments, too, where the filmmakers play with visual language to reward attentive viewers. For example, when the protagonist enters a strange, distorted version of the city in search of a hidden location, the buildings seem to shift in impossible ways, and the streets appear to stretch and contract, like something out of a dream. On closer inspection, the architecture of the city resembles elements from ancient civilizations, from Greek and Roman columns to Egyptian obelisks, subtly suggesting that the world the protagonist is entering is timeless, built on layers of human history and myth. The sense of entering an ancient and unknowable place is reinforced by the sounds of distant, echoing voices, which seem to come from nowhere yet feel hauntingly familiar. These auditory cues act as another subtle reference to the idea of the eternal return, a theme that has been explored in various ways throughout literature and philosophy, from Nietzsche's concept of the eternal recurrence to the cyclical nature of time found in many religious and spiritual traditions. Another visual clue that rewards careful observation is the recurring appearance of a particular symbol, a geometric pattern that appears in various forms, from the markings on the map to the wallpaper in the protagonist's apartment. This pattern, which seems to shift and change each time it appears, becomes a symbol of the fractured reality the protagonist is navigating. The shifting pattern reflects the fluidity of time and perception, as well as the idea that the protagonist's understanding of the world is constantly in flux. As the film progresses, the symbol becomes more pronounced, culminating in a key moment when the protagonist finally grasps its significance. It is, in a way, the key to unlocking the mystery of their own mind. There's also a brief but significant moment when the protagonist encounters a strange figure, an old man who seems to be waiting for them. He speaks in riddles and points to a painting on the wall, a painting of an empty room. The painting is a reference to the Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch, an iconic work of art that has been the subject of much interpretation over the years. The painting, with its surreal, dreamlike quality, is a visual representation of the fragmented nature of existence that Alters explores so thoroughly. The old man's cryptic words, coupled with the presence of the painting, act as a reminder that the protagonist is not simply solving a mystery. They are navigating an existential journey that is at once deeply personal and universally human. As the film nears its conclusion, the clues begin to come together in a way that feels both inevitable and disorienting. The protagonist, having unlocked the final secrets of the map and the fractured reality they've been navigating, stands at the crossroads of their own existence. The final moments are filled with symbolic imagery, the fractured mirror, the shifting city, and the mysterious figure that watches from the shadows. These details, combined with the film's masterful use of sound, visual motifs, and philosophical underpinnings, create an experience that is as intellectually stimulating as it is emotionally resonant. Alters is not just a film, it is an intricate web of connections, a tapestry woven with references to art, philosophy, and literature. Each Easter egg, each subtle reference, adds another layer of meaning to the story, turning the film into a multidimensional puzzle that reveals its true depth only to those willing to look closely. These hidden details, though they may seem insignificant in the moment, ultimately serve to enrich the viewing experience, offering a deeper understanding of the protagonist's journey and the world they inhabit. For those who pay attention, Alters is a film that offers more with each viewing, a treasure trove of secrets waiting to be uncovered. As the protagonist of Alters embarks on their journey through a fragmented and shifting reality, the world around them is not just a backdrop to their quest but a carefully constructed landscape, full of hidden details, subtle references, and carefully placed clues that reveal themselves to those paying close attention. The filmmakers have layered Alters with symbols, foreshadowing, and cultural references, transforming it into a cinematic puzzle that invites viewers to look beyond the surface and delve into its deeper meanings. These hidden details not only enhance the film's thematic complexity, but also reward the sharp-eyed viewer who is willing to look for connections that go unnoticed at first glance. From the very beginning, Alters creates a sense of disorientation and mystery, and this atmosphere is reflected in the visual and auditory cues that permeate the film. The opening sequence, with its slow zoom over a desolate cityscape at dawn, sets the tone for a world on the brink of collapse, but it's also an intentional homage to the works of films like Blade Runner and The Matrix, two pieces of cinema that explore themes of perception, reality, and the fragility of human existence. The glowing neon signs that flicker in the distance, the empty streets bathed in a cold light, are not just aesthetic choices. They echo the dystopian, technologically mediated futures that have long been a staple of speculative fiction. The city in Alters, like the worlds in Blade Runner and The Matrix, is a place where what is real is constantly in question, and where the boundary between the virtual and the physical is indistinct. As the protagonist receives the mysterious invitation that sparks the beginning of their journey, the shape of the envelope itself becomes significant. It's a small detail, easy to overlook, but its design is reminiscent of tarot card symbolism, particularly the Fool card, which represents new beginnings, potential, and the leap into the unknown. This subtle reference foreshadows the protagonist's own journey, a journey that will be filled with strange revelations, transformative experiences, and ultimately, self-discovery. The design of the envelope mirrors the idea of fate, a theme that runs throughout the movie. The idea that the protagonist has already been set on a path, whether they realize it or not. Throughout the film, the use of mirrors becomes a recurring motif, symbolizing the fractured nature of identity and the perception of self. This symbolism can be traced back to a range of literary and cinematic influences, from the surrealist works of Jean Cocteau to the philosophical musings of Jorge Luis Borges, whose stories often explore the idea of infinite reflections and the inability to distinguish one's true self from the illusion. The broken mirror that the protagonist encounters, first glimpsed in a seemingly innocuous scene, reappears at critical moments throughout the film, often when the protagonist is forced to confront their own identity and the blurred lines between their personal reality and the shifting, larger world they're trying to understand. In one pivotal moment, when the protagonist gazes into the fractured glass, they see multiple versions of themselves, hinting at the fractured nature of their identity and the various paths their life could have taken. This moment acts as a microcosm of the entire film, where the protagonist is forced to reconcile the different versions of themselves, each one representing a different choice or path they might have followed. This theme of fractured identities is mirrored by the protagonist's interactions with other characters, particularly secondary character 1. At first, they seem like a guide, someone who can help the protagonist understand the world that is collapsing around them. But as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that secondary character 1 is not just a mentor. They are a reflection of the protagonist's own struggles and confusion. Their cryptic speech and evasive behavior suggest that they, too, are grappling with the nature of their existence, and the layers of their identity are just as fractured as the protagonists. The film's decision to keep secondary character 1's true motivations ambiguous, never fully explaining their past or their connection to the protagonist, adds to the sense of unease and foreshadows the eventual revelation that the journey the protagonist is on is also a journey of self-destruction and self-realization. In the second half of the film, the focus shifts from the external mystery to the internal conflict the protagonist faces. The map that has guided them throughout the film, initially seen as a literal tool to navigate a physical space, reveals itself to be a map of the mind, a cartography of the self. This shift in perception is foreshadowed in subtle ways, such as the protagonist's growing disconnection from the world around them. At one point, the protagonist walks through a crowded street, but the people seem to fade into the background, their faces indistinct and their movements mechanical. It's a moment that hints at the dissolution of the protagonist's own sense of self, as if they, too, are becoming part of the blurry, indistinct world they are trying to escape. One of the film's most striking sequences occurs when the protagonist stumbles upon an old library, its shelves lined with books that seem both familiar and alien. The books themselves are filled with symbols, codes, and obscure references, some of which echo the themes of memory, perception, and time that run throughout the film. If you look closely, you'll notice that some of the titles are direct references to works that have explored similar themes. Books like The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton, The Interpretation of Dreams by Sigmund Freud, and even Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. These books act as Easter eggs for viewers familiar with these texts, drawing parallels between the protagonist's journey and the philosophical and psychological inquiries posed in these works. The library itself, dark and labyrinthine, mirrors the maze-like journey the protagonist is on, as well as the inner workings of their own mind. The idea that knowledge, like the labyrinth, is both a tool and a trap becomes increasingly clear as the protagonist's journey progresses. There are other moments, too, where the filmmakers play with visual language to reward attentive viewers. For example, when the protagonist enters a strange, distorted version of the city in search of a hidden location, the buildings seem to shift in impossible ways, and the streets appear to stretch and contract, like something out of a dream. On closer inspection, the architecture of the city resembles elements from ancient civilizations, from Greek and Roman columns to Egyptian obelisks, subtly suggesting that the world the protagonist is entering is timeless, built on layers of human history and myth. The sense of entering an ancient and unknowable place is reinforced by the sounds of distant, echoing voices, which seem to come from nowhere yet feel hauntingly familiar. These auditory cues act as another subtle reference to the idea of the eternal return, a theme that has been explored in various ways throughout literature and philosophy, from Nietzsche's concept of the eternal recurrence to the cyclical nature of time found in many religious and spiritual traditions. Another visual clue that rewards careful observation is the recurring appearance of a particular symbol, a geometric pattern that appears in various forms, from the markings on the map to the wallpaper in the protagonist's apartment. This pattern, which seems to shift and change each time it appears, becomes a symbol of the fractured reality the protagonist is navigating. The shifting pattern reflects the fluidity of time and perception, as well as the idea that the protagonist's understanding of the world is constantly in flux. As the film progresses, the symbol becomes more pronounced, culminating in a key moment when the protagonist finally grasps its significance. It is, in a way, the key to unlocking the mystery of their own mind. There's also a brief but significant moment when the protagonist encounters a strange figure, an old man who seems to be waiting for them. He speaks in riddles and points to a painting on the wall, a painting of an empty room. The painting is a reference to the Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch, an iconic work of art that has been the subject of much interpretation over the years. The painting, with its surreal, dreamlike quality, is a visual representation of the fractured, fragmented nature of existence that Alters explores so thoroughly. The old man's cryptic words, coupled with the presence of the painting, act as a reminder that the protagonist is not simply solving a mystery. They are navigating an existential journey that is at once deeply personal and universally human. As the film nears its conclusion, the clues begin to come together in a way that feels both inevitable and disorienting. The protagonist, having unlocked the final secrets of the map and the fractured reality they've been navigating, stands at the crossroads of their own existence. The final moments are filled with symbolic imagery, the fractured mirror, the shifting city, and the mysterious figure that watches from the shadows. These details, combined with the film's masterful use of sound, visual motifs, and philosophical underpinnings, create an experience that is as intellectually stimulating as it is emotionally resonant. Alters is not just a film. It is an intricate web of connections, a tapestry woven with references to art, philosophy, and literature. Each Easter egg, each subtle reference, adds another layer of meaning to the story, turning the film into a multidimensional puzzle that reveals its true depth only to those willing to look closely. These hidden details, though they may seem insignificant in the moment, ultimately serve to enrich the viewing experience, offering a deeper understanding of the protagonist's journey and the world they inhabit. For those who pay attention, Alters is a film that offers more with each viewing, a treasure trove of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Strangest facts about the movie, 2,500 words, share fascinating behind-the-scenes stories and unique production challenges. Reveal trivia about the cast, crew, or creative decisions. Discuss any unusual events or controversies surrounding the movie. Write this like a seamless story with no headings, divisions, or section markers. Present these facts as part of a cohesive story. ChatGPT said. ChatGPT. The making of Alters is a story as layered and complex as the film itself, full of fascinating behind-the-scenes stories and unique challenges that seemed almost to mirror the movie's themes of fractured realities and shifting perceptions. It's a tale of creative vision, unforeseen obstacles, and moments of pure serendipity, all of which contributed to making Alters one of the most talked-about films of the year. As with any movie that pushes the boundaries of storytelling and visual design, the production process was anything but smooth. Yet, these challenges only seemed to add to the allure of the film, creating a mystique that would follow it from its first trailer to its eventual release. From the very outset, Alters was a project unlike any other. Director's name, was drawn to the story not just because of its speculative nature but because it dealt with universal themes of identity, choice, and the nature of reality itself, ideas that are difficult to visualize, let alone execute in a way that feels real and tangible. To bring this vision to life, the production team faced an uphill battle, particularly when it came to the film's groundbreaking special effects. The film's premise required an intricate blend of practical effects and digital magic, and achieving this balance proved to be a technical challenge from day one. Perhaps the most ambitious aspect of Alters was its decision to use as little CGI as possible. Instead, the filmmakers opted for a highly experimental approach, using practical effects, in-camera tricks, and a mix of old-school filmmaking techniques to create the film's surreal and mind-bending visuals. The decision to limit the use of CGI was inspired by director's name's desire to create a tactile sense of reality, even in the most fantastical sequences. The goal was to make the audience feel as though they were inside the film's world, experiencing the shifting landscapes, distorted cities, and strange phenomena in a way that felt immediate and visceral. One of the most memorable effects in the film was the way the protagonist's environment would subtly shift in ways that reflected their growing disorientation. In several key sequences, entire rooms would bend, warp, or dissolve into new dimensions right before the audience's eyes. Achieving this effect in camera required a combination of physical sets, forced perspective, and practical effects that involved rotating entire rooms and manipulating the angles of furniture and props. The crew also used mirrors, light, and shadow to create the illusion of space folding in on itself. The level of precision required for these sequences was staggering, with many of the most complex shots taking several weeks to perfect. There were moments when the crew would be working on one shot for days, only to realize that something as simple as a shadow cast at the wrong angle could ruin the illusion. In one particularly mind-bending sequence, the protagonist walks through a door, only to find themselves back in the same room they just left. This was accomplished by building two identical rooms, each one rotating on a different axis, creating the illusion of infinity. The complexity of this sequence led to a rather hilarious incident when the crew, after shooting a particularly intricate take, realized they had actually gotten lost on the set itself. The rooms were so meticulously designed to resemble each other that even the actors and crew began to lose their sense of orientation. Working with the actors proved to be just as challenging. The film's central performances, especially that of the protagonist, required a level of emotional and psychological depth that demanded not only talent but an unusual amount of dedication from the cast. A lead actress's name, threw themselves into the role of the protagonist with an intensity that bordered on obsession. To fully understand the character's inner turmoil and self-doubt, lead actress's name spent weeks reading books on existential philosophy, psychology, and even meditation practices. There were moments when they would retreat into their trailer, spending hours in silence, trying to get into the right mental space to play scenes that required an almost unearthly level of emotional commitment. In fact, some of the more disturbing scenes in the film, those in which the protagonist begins to lose touch with reality, were so emotionally taxing that lead actress's name would often refuse to leave their dressing room between takes, requesting only quiet time with a single cup of tea. It wasn't just about playing a character. It was about becoming that character, living within their skin long enough to make their gradual transformation into a fractured soul feel believable. One of the most curious aspects of the production was how the crew maintained a sense of secrecy around certain plot elements. The filmmakers went to extraordinary lengths to keep details about the movie under wraps, even going so far as to use code names for specific scenes. For example, the now iconic scene in which the protagonist encounters a mirror that distorts their reflection was originally referred to as the laundry scene in internal documents. Only a few trusted members of the team knew the true nature of the shot, and even the actors were kept in the dark about the specifics of the scene until just before filming. In fact, the sequence was so tightly controlled that the crew built a replica set of the protagonist's apartment to film the scene twice. Once for the actual shoot, and once to trick the actors into thinking they were filming a completely different scene altogether. The reason for this secrecy? The filmmakers were determined to preserve the element of surprise for the audience. They wanted the pivotal moment of the film to land with maximum impact, and they knew that if even the smallest detail were leaked, it could ruin the entire experience. This secrecy extended beyond the set itself. When it came to marketing the film, the team took a similarly unconventional approach. Rather than releasing traditional trailers and behind-the-scenes featurettes, the film's promotional campaign focused on cryptic, symbolic imagery that alluded to the film's themes without giving away its plot. One of the most memorable pieces of marketing was a series of short, surreal videos posted to the film's social media accounts, each one featuring distorted footage of the protagonist walking through a shifting landscape, accompanied by dissonant, otherworldly sounds. These teasers left fans intrigued but utterly mystified, fueling online speculation and giving the film an air of mystery long before its release. The campaign reached its peak when the film's first official poster was revealed, a stark, minimalist design featuring a single, broken mirror, reflecting nothing but a void. The image captured the essence of the film perfectly, and fans immediately began analyzing every detail, looking for clues about the story. While the creative process was marked by experimentation and secrecy, it wasn't without its controversies. One of the most discussed aspects of the film was the use of a certain controversial symbol, which some viewers interpreted as a reference to specific cultural or political event. The symbol, a seemingly innocuous geometric shape that appears at various points throughout the film, was intended to represent the protagonist's fractured sense of self. However, after the film's release, certain online communities began to draw connections between the symbol and various conspiracy theories, with some even going so far as to accuse the filmmakers of embedding hidden political messages. This sparked a wave of media attention, with some critics praising the film for its subversive nature, while others criticized it for being too cryptic or deliberately provocative. The filmmakers were quick to dismiss any intentional political messaging, insisting that the symbol was purely a visual tool meant to represent the disintegration of the protagonist's psyche. However, the controversy did nothing to deter the film's success. If anything, it added to the intrigue, with viewers flocking to theaters not only to experience the narrative but to decode its deeper meanings. Behind the controversy, however, the film's production was marked by a sense of camaraderie and innovation that transcended the usual Hollywood formula. The cast and crew were deeply invested in making something truly unique, something that would challenge audiences and push the boundaries of what a film could achieve. The director's ability to foster a collaborative environment allowed the film's creative team to experiment freely and take risks that most major studio productions would shy away from. There were moments when the production seemed to teeter on the edge of chaos, when an entire set would need to be torn down and rebuilt in a matter of hours, or when an effect that was supposed to work perfectly would fail in front of a live audience. But through it all, there was a sense of trust, a belief that the final product would be something extraordinary. One of the most remarkable behind-the-scenes stories came from an unexpected source: the film's composer's name, who wrote the haunting, otherworldly score. The composer, known for their work in experimental music, took a non-traditional approach to crafting the soundtrack. Instead of relying on orchestral arrangements or electronic sounds, composer's name recorded the majority of the score using a collection of old, broken instruments that had been found in abandoned warehouses across the city. The resulting music, which features a mix of distorted violins, warped pianos, and eerie, dissonant tones, became one of the film's defining elements. The soundtrack itself was so unique that it required a specific sound design for the final mix, with the composer spending weeks in post-production, manipulating the recordings until they achieved the exact tonal effect they were looking for. The music perfectly captured the film's unsettling atmosphere, heightening the tension and adding an additional layer of emotion to the protagonist's journey. The sheer number of unusual, often surreal events that occurred during the production of Alters could easily fill a book of their own. Whether it was the crew becoming disoriented by their own sets, the actors' dedication to embodying their roles in increasingly extreme ways, or the heated online debates sparked by the film's cryptic symbolism, every part of the making of Alters felt like it was part of a larger, unknowable puzzle. The challenges faced by the filmmakers and the team only added to the mystique of the film, creating an aura of uncertainty and wonder that would ultimately capture the imagination of audiences worldwide. Alters is a movie that is as enigmatic behind the scenes as it is on screen, and it's these strange, fascinating stories, from the broken mirrors on set to the mysterious symbolism, that make the film's journey from concept to finished product all the more remarkable. It's a movie that was born from experimentation, passion, and a willingness to take risks. And in the end, it's a testament to the power of creative vision, no matter how strange, surreal, or controversial the journey may be. From the moment Alters first unravels its enigmatic premise, there's an unshakable sense that nothing is quite what it seems. The film asks its audience to question everything, from the identities of its characters to the very fabric of the reality in which they live. As the protagonist journeys deeper into this fragmented world, key moments, sometimes subtle, other times explosive, act as critical turning points that shape both the emotional depth and thematic complexity of the film. These pivotal scenes not only impact the characters but also stir something deep within the audience, pulling them further into the disorienting, often disturbing web the film spins. Each of these moments feels like a piece of a larger puzzle, not merely advancing the plot but heightening the philosophical questions at the film's core. One of the most striking scenes occurs early in the movie, just as the protagonist receives the cryptic invitation that sets their journey in motion. It's a moment of quiet before the storm, where the ambiguity of the world around them is first made palpable. The invitation itself is a mysterious artifact, a beautiful, yet hauntingly simple object that seems to pulse with significance. As the protagonist inspects the envelope, there's a quiet, almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere. The music, minimal and almost distant at first, swells in anticipation. For all its simplicity, this moment is a powerful anchor to the film's central theme. The idea that identity, fate, and perception are all tied together in a way that we can't yet comprehend. It's as if the invitation itself is a manifestation of the choice the protagonist is about to face. Will they open it? Will they step into a new reality, or remain in the life they know? The audience, too, feels the weight of this choice, the quiet terror that accompanies any step into the unknown. As the protagonist embarks on their journey, one of the most chilling aspects of the film is the way in which their environment begins to reflect their internal descent. The first real taste of this occurs when they enter a strange, labyrinthine alleyway, seemingly ordinary at first, but soon twisting and contorting in a way that defies logic. It's one of the many sequences where the line between the real and the surreal begins to blur. The architecture of the alleyway isn't just a physical space, it's a mirror of the protagonist's fractured state of mind. The further they venture, the more unsettling and alien the surroundings become, as though the space itself is reacting to their thoughts, their emotions, and even their fears. The scene evokes a classic psychological concept, the idea that when we lose touch with our sense of self, our surroundings no longer feel like a home but a labyrinth we must escape. The protagonist's growing panic is palpable in these moments, and the way the camera closes in on their face, the tightness of their breathing, the sheen of sweat on their brow, perfectly mirrors the disorienting nature of the environment itself. For the audience, it's an invitation to experience not just the physical journey of the protagonist, but their mental and emotional unraveling. In this sequence, the film shifts from being a simple narrative about a journey to something more profound, an exploration of perception, memory, and the fragility of the human mind. The use of practical effects, rooms that shift, doorways that lead to nowhere, speaks not just to the idea of physical dislocation, but to the psychological fragmentation that the protagonist is slowly beginning to experience. The audience can no longer distinguish between what is real and what is simply a reflection of the protagonist's increasing isolation. This scene acts as the perfect example of how Alters subtly works on multiple levels, blending visual storytelling with thematic exploration. It is not just the protagonist's environment that is changing, but their understanding of it. The uncertainty in the protagonist's eyes mirrors the viewer's own confusion, forging a deeper connection between the two. Yet, it is not just the mind-bending visuals that anchor the film's emotional weight. There is an undercurrent of philosophical questioning that grows stronger as the film progresses. The first truly earth-shattering moment comes midway through the movie, when the protagonist encounters a figure from their past. This individual, who seems both familiar and entirely alien, forces the protagonist to confront an aspect of their life they have long buried, a memory that has shaped the course of their decisions but which they've long sought to forget. This scene, set in a shadowed room bathed in a cold, sterile light, is quiet but loaded with tension. It's the kind of confrontation that goes beyond mere dialogue. It's a clash of internal worlds. The figure's words, cryptic and dispassionate, begin to chip away at the protagonist's sense of control. The illusion of stability they've been clinging to begins to crumble as they realize that the past they thought they could escape is inextricably tied to their present. It's a profound moment of self-realization, but also an emotional rupture. For the protagonist, the encounter is a mirror of all their repressed fears and unspoken truths. For the audience, it's a gut punch, a reminder that we cannot outrun our own histories, no matter how far we run. It is this universal fear, the confrontation with the past, that resonates with the audience so powerfully. As the protagonist spirals into the unknown, so too does the viewer, left wondering just how much of the world they know is rooted in truth, and how much of it is a construct built upon lies. The tension between the past and the present reaches its peak in one of the most visually striking and emotionally intense scenes. The protagonists encounter with a version of themselves from an alternate timeline. The visual composition of the moment is nothing short of breathtaking. The two versions of the protagonists stand across from each other, their faces eerily similar, yet emotionally and psychologically worlds apart. As the camera slowly moves between them, it's as though the audience is being pulled into the very fabric of the protagonist's mind. The lighting is harsh, casting deep shadows that accentuate the stark differences between the two. One version is broken, scarred by choices made. The other is whole, untouched by the weight of decisions not yet made. The tension between them is palpable, as each protagonist grapples with the reality of the other's existence. It's a confrontation not just with another self, but with the very concept of choice. The idea that every decision we make leads us down an entirely different path, creating alternate realities in which we are both the heroes and the villains, is explored in a way that feels intimate and existential. This moment is crucial in understanding the emotional core of Alters. It's not simply a mind-bending spectacle, but an exploration of how we reconcile the different versions of ourselves that exist within our memories. The alternate self sequence, in all its strangeness, captures the universal experience of self-doubt and the overwhelming weight of missed opportunities. The audience is forced to reckon with the same question as the protagonist. What would our lives look like if we had made different choices? Could we ever truly escape the versions of ourselves that exist in the past, or are they always lurking in the shadows, ready to reappear when we least expect it? The final act of the film builds upon the emotional and thematic momentum established in the earlier scenes. As the protagonist makes their final descent into the heart of the fractured world they've been navigating, the film becomes an almost overwhelming experience, one that blends visual pyrotechnics with emotional rawness. There's a key scene in the climax where the protagonist, having lost all sense of time and space, is confronted by a series of mirror-like windows that reflect various versions of their life. The reflections are not simply distorted versions of the protagonist's face, but windows into alternate realities, each one showing a life they could have had, each one carrying its own brand of sorrow and joy. It's a stunning metaphor for the human condition, the endless cascade of what-ifs that haunt our minds. The protagonist, standing at the center of these reflections, is forced to reckon with the inevitability of their choices, and the realization that there is no going back. In these final moments, the audience is invited into the protagonist's inner turmoil in a way that feels almost intrusive. The layers of reality and identity, which have been slowly peeling away throughout the film, are now completely exposed. This moment of emotional and philosophical reckoning is not just a turning point for the character, but for the audience as well. It forces them to confront their own understanding of self, of choice, and of the fragile nature of time. The film's resolution doesn't provide answers. There's no clear, happy ending or neatly tied-up conclusion. Instead, it leaves the audience suspended, like the protagonist, in a state of limbo, where everything and nothing is possible. In this way, Alters doesn't just tell a story, it challenges the viewer to interrogate their own perceptions, their own realities. The emotional and thematic resonance of Alters is a direct result of how these key scenes are carefully constructed and strategically placed throughout the narrative. Each pivotal moment builds upon the last, creating an experience that is as intellectually challenging as it is emotionally engaging. The scenes don't just advance the plot. They delve into the core of what it means to be human, how we perceive ourselves, how we make choices, and how we come to terms with the inevitable consequences of those choices. In doing so, the film speaks to the heart of the human experience, leaving the audience not just entertained, but profoundly moved, questioning the nature of their own existence long after the credits roll. Key production of Alters was a feat of creativity and technical mastery, blending cutting-edge technology with old-school craftsmanship in a way that few films have dared to attempt. Behind every frame was a desire to push the boundaries of what cinema could accomplish, not just in terms of visuals but in how it could evoke emotion and challenge perception. The technical choices made during the production weren't merely about dazzling the audience with spectacle. They were deeply integrated with the film's themes of fractured realities, identity, and the malleability of time. Every creative decision, from the choice of camera angles to the manipulation of light, was driven by the central goal of immersing the viewer in a world where everything felt both familiar and disorienting. And it all began with the vision of a director who saw the film not as a linear narrative but as a psychological puzzle, a labyrinth of visual and emotional cues that would guide the audience through a landscape of uncertainty. One of the first challenges the crew faced was how to visually represent the central theme of the film, the breakdown of reality. From the beginning, the director insisted that the world of Alters would not be bound by the conventions of traditional set design. The idea was to create an environment that was fluid, where the physical space itself could bend, shift, and distort in accordance with the protagonist's mental state. This required the crew to rethink the very foundations of filmmaking. Instead of relying heavily on digital effects or CGI to create the fantastical shifts in architecture and space, the team opted for an ambitious hybrid approach, using practical effects to create physical transformations on set that would later be enhanced with subtle visual effects. The goal was to craft an immersive experience where the audience could sense the protagonist's disorientation not just through their emotions, but through the way the world around them felt alive and unpredictable. Perhaps the most striking example of this approach was in the design of the labyrinthine alleyway that plays a pivotal role early in the film. The scene required a series of rotating, adjustable sets that could change angles and perspectives in real time, giving the illusion that the space itself was continuously warping. The design team constructed a massive, multi-tiered set in which entire walls could be rotated on hidden tracks, making the narrow alleyways appear to stretch and twist as the protagonist moved through them. This was an engineering challenge in itself. The team worked around the clock to perfect the mechanics, ensuring that the walls could shift seamlessly without the audience noticing the tricks behind them. But what truly made the effect stand out was how it was shot. The film employed a combination of wide-angle lenses, low-angled shots, and Steadicam techniques to amplify the sense of unease and disorientation. The camera would follow the protagonist as they navigated this strange space, creating a fluid, almost dreamlike effect that mirrored their emotional and psychological state. It was as if the space itself was a living thing, reacting to the protagonist's every move, constantly pulling them deeper into a world where nothing could be trusted. But creating the shifting spaces of Alters wasn't just about physical ingenuity, it was also about light. The manipulation of lighting throughout the film was instrumental in conveying the mood and dissonance between the protagonist's internal world and their external surroundings. The cinematographer's name, worked closely with the director to experiment with lighting setups that would enhance the sense of instability. In one particularly haunting sequence, the protagonist walks through a room that seems to stretch endlessly before them. The lighting gradually fades as they move forward, darkening the edges of the frame until the room is consumed by shadow. At first glance, this might seem like a simple lighting choice, but it was actually part of a broader thematic strategy. The dimming light mirrored the protagonist's increasing sense of isolation and self-doubt. As the film progresses, the shifting light not only reflects the world around the character but begins to take on a more symbolic role, casting shadows that are sometimes ominous, sometimes inviting, but always uncertain. The sound design in Alters was equally important in conveying the world's surreal nature. The sound team employed a combination of natural sounds, synthesized noises, and audio manipulation to create an unsettling auditory landscape that complemented the visual elements. The film's score, composed by composer's name, was experimental in its own right, incorporating unconventional instruments like distorted violins, repitched piano notes, and digitally altered percussion. These elements were blended with a mix of environmental sounds, such as echoes, murmurs, and distant thuds, which created a sonic texture that was both haunting and immersive. In key moments, the music would swell dramatically, only to fade into dissonant silence, emphasizing the tension between the protagonist's perception and the unreality of the world they were navigating. The entire soundtrack was designed to feel as if it was pulling the audience into a void, amplifying the film's central theme of identity loss and the tenuous nature of reality. But the technical feats weren't limited to the manipulation of space or sound. One of the most visually stunning aspects of Alters is the way it handles transitions between different versions of the protagonist's reality. As the film delves into the idea of alternate timelines and parallel worlds, the team came up with an innovative technique to represent these shifts. In a scene where the protagonist encounters a version of themselves from an alternate reality, the set and the character's appearance subtly begin to change, creating a seamless transformation that leaves the audience questioning what is real. The crew used a combination of practical makeup and prosthetics, layered with real-time compositing, to create the effect of the character morphing before the viewer's eyes. These transformations were designed to feel organic, so that the shift from one reality to another didn't feel jarring or artificial. It was a delicate balance between practical and digital effects, requiring intense collaboration between the special effects team and the visual effects team. The result was a fluid, hypnotic sequence that visually captured the instability of the protagonist's sense of self and the constantly shifting nature of their world. Perhaps one of the most unexpected technical challenges came during the filming of the climactic scene, where the protagonist is confronted with a vast, fractured landscape, a surreal space where time and space appear to have no meaning. The filmmakers had originally planned to create this world entirely using digital effects, but as the film neared the final stages of production, they realized that they needed something more tactile, more real. After numerous discussions, the team decided to build a massive, rotating set that would physically shift during the filming, allowing the actors to interact with the environment in real time. This required constructing a colossal, multi-level set that could rotate on a giant axis, simulating the feeling of a fragmented, unstable world. The set was so large that it had to be built in an outdoor location, with a team of engineers working around the clock to ensure the structure was both safe and functional. On filming days, the set would rotate in slow, deliberate movements, giving the actors just enough time to adjust to the changing environment. The effect was so successful that it completely transformed the tone of the scene, allowing the characters to react to the shifting world in real time, adding a layer of authenticity to their performances. The sequence, in which the protagonist faces their fractured selves in this unstable space, is one of the most visually and emotionally powerful moments in the film, thanks in large part to the technical ingenuity behind it. While much of the film's magic comes from its visual and technical achievements, it's important to remember that these accomplishments were driven by a deep commitment to the story. Every decision made on set, whether it was a choice of lens or the angle of a lighting rig, was in service of conveying the film's complex emotional landscape. This sense of purpose is perhaps best encapsulated in a seemingly small but profoundly significant detail: the use of reflections throughout the movie. In many key sequences, mirrors, windows, and other reflective surfaces are employed not just as visual motifs, but as metaphors for the protagonist's fractured identity. The reflections are never static. They shift, distort, and change, mirroring the protagonist's internal chaos. In one scene, the protagonist walks through a corridor lined with mirrors, each reflecting a different version of themselves, a haunting visual that underscores the film's themes of identity and choice. The challenge, however, was how to shoot these reflections in a way that felt real while maintaining the surreal tone of the film. The filmmakers achieved this by using a combination of practical mirrors, careful blocking, and camera angles that allowed for seamless interaction between the character and their reflection. The result was a haunting visual representation of the protagonist's struggle to reconcile different versions of themselves, adding a layer of emotional complexity to the scene. The innovation behind Alters didn't just reside in its visual effects, sound design, or complex set pieces. It was a result of the entire crew's willingness to push boundaries and experiment in new ways. Every technical choice was made with the intention of creating a deeper connection between the protagonist's psychological journey and the world they inhabited. The seamless blending of practical and digital effects, the attention to detail in every frame, and the groundbreaking approaches to sound and lighting all came together to create a film that was as intellectually engaging as it was visually stunning. For all its technical feats, though, Alters remains grounded in the emotional depth of its characters. It's a film that forces us to confront the instability of our own identities, our fears of the unknown, and the overwhelming consequences of the choices we make. And in this sense, the technical achievements, no matter how impressive, are always in service of the story, making the film's impact even more profound and lasting. Alters is a film that invites its audience into a labyrinth of meaning, not just through its stunning visuals and mind-bending narrative, but through the rich layers of thematic depth and social commentary woven into its fabric. At first glance, the story may appear to be a fantastical journey into alternate realities and shifting timelines, a high-concept exploration of what it means to be human in a world that constantly changes. However, the film's true power lies in its ability to tap into universal fears and desires, using the protagonist's personal odyssey as a lens through which broader societal and philosophical issues are explored. Themes of identity, choice, and the fragility of reality reverberate throughout the narrative, subtly reflecting the tumultuous and fragmented state of the modern world. At the heart of Alters lies an exploration of self-identity, an issue that has only become more pressing in today's world. The protagonist's journey through various versions of their life and alternate timelines reflects the tension many people feel in trying to understand who they are in an ever-changing world. The film captures the disorientation of living in a society where our sense of self is constantly under construction, shaped not only by our personal experiences but by the social roles we are expected to play. The shifting nature of the protagonist's world serves as a metaphor for the way we navigate identity in the digital age, where social media profiles, algorithmic predictions, and cultural expectations all conspire to mold us into something we're not sure we even recognize anymore. As the protagonist encounters different versions of themselves, each a manifestation of the choices they've made or failed to make, the film asks an unspoken question. Are we truly in control of who we become, or are we merely fragments of the realities we inhabit? The idea of self-fragmentation is made explicit through the use of mirrors and reflective surfaces, which become symbols of the protagonist's fractured psyche. Mirrors, both literal and metaphorical, are strategically placed throughout the film as the protagonist struggles to reconcile the various versions of themselves that emerge across timelines. In a key scene, the protagonist steps into a room filled with distorted reflections, each one showing a different aspect of their personality, some familiar, others completely alien. This sequence is not just a visual motif but a powerful symbol of the internal struggle many face when confronted with the dissonance between who they are and who they feel they should be. The mirrors function as gateways, not just into alternate versions of the protagonist's life but into the deepest corners of their mind, where insecurities, regrets, and unspoken desires are laid bare. The inability to fully grasp one's reflection becomes a poignant commentary on the difficulty of truly knowing oneself, a theme that resonates in a world where external validation often overshadows internal truths. As the film delves into the protagonist's psychological descent, it also begins to question the very nature of reality itself. This theme is embodied in the shifting, labyrinthine spaces the protagonist navigates, spaces that appear to change based on their emotional state. These distorted environments represent the tenuousness of reality, a world that is not fixed but constantly malleable, where the line between what is real and what is imagined is dangerously thin. The film suggests that, much like the protagonist, we are all vulnerable to the forces around us that shape our perceptions of the world. In a society where information is curated, edited, and presented through a multitude of lenses, it's easy to lose touch with what is real and what is fabricated. Alters becomes a meditation on this precarious relationship with truth, exploring how our sense of reality is constructed not just by our experiences but by the societal narratives we subscribe to, the media we consume, and the personas we cultivate. The film's portrayal of multiple realities is also an allegory for the choices we make and the consequences they have on our lives. The protagonist's journey through different versions of themselves, each one a product of different decisions, desires, or outcomes, mirrors the constant tension between fate and free will. It speaks to the deep human need to understand the paths not taken and to question whether the choices we make are truly ours, or whether they are dictated by forces outside our control. The multiple timelines in Alters are not simply a narrative device. They serve as a poignant reminder of the complexity of human existence. Every decision, no matter how small, creates ripples that affect the course of our lives in ways we may never fully understand. This theme taps into a universal anxiety, the fear of making the wrong choice and the desire to go back and rewrite the past. The protagonist's struggle to reconcile the different versions of themselves becomes a symbol for the societal pressure to get it right, to conform to an ideal, to make the correct decisions, and to meet the expectations of both others and oneself. The film also reflects a broader cultural discourse around technology and its impact on our lives. While Alters is not explicitly about the digital age, its exploration of shifting realities, identities, and perceptions of truth can be seen as a critique of the technological landscape we inhabit. As the protagonist moves through increasingly distorted and fragmented spaces, the viewer is reminded of the ways in which technology blurs the lines between what is real and what is virtual. The digital world, with its avatars, filters, and hyperreal representations of life, creates a version of reality that is often at odds with our physical, emotional, and psychological experiences. This disconnect is mirrored in the film's world, where the boundaries between different timelines and alternate selves are porous, and reality itself becomes something that can be manipulated, controlled, and even lost. The film suggests that as technology continues to evolve, it will further distort our sense of self, forcing us to confront an unsettling truth. We may one day find ourselves trapped in a world where we no longer know what is real or who we are. However, Alters isn't just about personal identity and the anxiety that comes with it. It also serves as a commentary on societal structures and the ways in which they shape and constrain us. As the protagonist moves through their journey, they encounter other characters who represent the various forces that influence our lives, authority figures, societal norms, and the expectations placed upon us by others. One of the most striking aspects of the film is how these characters, though often secondary to the main plot, are never fully defined. They remain shadowy, enigmatic figures, their faces obscured by masks or distorted by the shifting spaces they inhabit. This intentional ambiguity is a powerful commentary on the way societal systems remain faceless and unknowable, often manipulating individuals from behind the scenes without ever fully revealing their true nature. The protagonists struggle to escape these systems, to regain control over their own identity, speaks to a broader societal critique of how we are all shaped by invisible forces, whether they be political, economic, or social, that seek to dictate the course of our lives. Alters also reflects the increasing fragmentation of our world, both politically and culturally. The film's narrative, with its constant shifts in time and space, mirrors the current state of global affairs, where traditional notions of unity, stability, and truth seem increasingly fractured. The protagonist's journey through a series of alternate timelines, each one more alien than the last, reflects the cultural and political divides that have come to define the 21st century. The way the world seems to splinter into competing realities, each one with its own set of rules, norms, and truths, echoes the way society is becoming more polarized, with different groups living in their own isolated bubbles, each unwilling or unable to acknowledge the other's perspective. The film's portrayal of this fractured reality serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of losing sight of a common truth and the film's symbolism extends beyond its visual motifs into the very structure of its narrative. Alters unfolds like a puzzle, with pieces scattered across different timelines and versions of reality. This fragmented structure forces the audience to engage with the material in an active way, piecing together the various fragments of the story to form a coherent whole. In doing so, the film mirrors the process of self-discovery, the idea that we, as individuals and as a society, must sift through the many different versions of ourselves, our histories, and our beliefs to find meaning and truth. Just as the protagonist must confront the fractured nature of their own identity, the audience is invited to reflect on the fragmented nature of the world around them. The film's ultimate resolution, if it can even be called that, suggests that the search for meaning is an ongoing process, one that is never fully resolved but always in flux, just as the film's multiple timelines and shifting realities are never fully reconciled. In Alters, the themes of identity, reality, and societal influence are explored with a complexity and depth that speak to the anxieties of our time. The film serves as both a personal journey for its protagonist and a broader social commentary, addressing the way in which our individual lives are shaped by larger cultural and technological forces. Through its symbolic use of mirrors, fractured timelines, and shifting environments, the film highlights the tension between self-discovery and societal pressure, between the reality we perceive and the reality that is imposed upon us. In the end, Alters forces the viewer to confront uncomfortable truths, not just about the world, but about themselves. The journey may be disorienting, but it is also necessary, for it is only through understanding the fractured nature of our reality that we can begin to piece together the truth of who we are and what it means to truly be free. The world of Alters isn't merely constructed by its narrative, but through every meticulous detail in its sound design, music, and visual composition. The director's vision is woven through every frame, every note, and every sound, a testament to the profound ways in which cinematic techniques can immerse and shape the audience's experience. Every scene feels like a carefully orchestrated dance, where sound and image coexist not just as a medium for storytelling, but as an extension of the film's thematic core. Alters doesn't just use its camera, lighting, or music to convey meaning. It exploits them to dissect the very essence of human experience, pulling the audience deeper into a world where perception is unreliable, time is fractured, and reality is never quite what it seems. The film opens with an eerie stillness, the quiet punctuated by a faint, irregular hum. It's a sound that seems to exist beyond the edges of perception, something foreign yet undeniably present. This subtle intrusion becomes the soundtrack to the film's visual exploration of fractured realities. It's through sound that we first understand the dislocation of the protagonist, not simply through dialogue or exposition, but through the sonic landscape that surrounds them. The sound design of Alters is integral to its immersive effect. Layers of ambient noise, distorted whispers, and the pulse of mechanical undertones create an environment that feels organic and unstable. From the moment the protagonist steps into the first surreal space, the sound envelops them, creating a world that is at once both tangible and impossibly distant. There's a sense of constant tension, a feeling that something is just beneath the surface, waiting to shift. The music, too, becomes an essential part of this psychological disorientation. Composed by composer's name, the score of Alters is a kaleidoscopic blend of unsettling strings, sporadic percussion, and electronically manipulated tones. The use of sound here isn't just to underscore the action, but to amplify the internal conflict of the protagonist. It's minimalistic in its structure, often relying on silence or subtle shifts in tone to heighten the emotional stakes. In quieter moments, there's a haunting stillness that contrasts sharply with the chaotic energy of more intense scenes. These moments of silence, filled only with the occasional echo or distant sound, allow the audience to feel the weight of isolation the protagonist experiences. When the score does swell, it often does so unexpectedly, as if mirroring the protagonist's emotional outbursts or moments of clarity, each crescendo punctuating their sense of confusion and the film's unpredictable journey. The cinematography is another key element that brings Alters to life. From the first scene, the camera feels like an active participant in the narrative, constantly moving in ways that align with the protagonist's emotional state. There's a fluidity to the camera work that matches the disorienting world in which the protagonist finds themselves. Never static, always in motion, even when the characters themselves are at rest. The use of tracking shots is masterful, creating a sense of intimacy with the protagonist as they navigate this shifting world. The camera doesn't simply follow the action. It seems to breathe alongside the character, pulling in close during moments of introspection and retreating when they're forced to confront an external threat. It's a dynamic visual style that mirrors the psychological shifts occurring within the protagonist, making the audience feel every jolt, every moment of unease. The lens choices are similarly deliberate, with wide-angle lenses often used to emphasize the vastness or emptiness of a given space, amplifying the protagonist's isolation. In some sequences, the use of wide shots creates a sense of being lost, as if the character is swallowed by the environment, their place within it insignificant in the grand scheme of things. These moments are balanced by the use of tighter, more intimate close-ups during moments of intense emotional conflict. In these scenes, the camera lingers on the protagonist's face, capturing the subtleties of their shifting expressions: fear, confusion, anger, and ultimately, realization. These close-ups are crucial to the audience's connection with the character, allowing us to see not just their external actions, but the inner turmoil they are experiencing as they navigate this fractured world. What stands out most about the camera work in Alters is how it often mirrors the protagonist's internal state by distorting or skewing the perspective of the frame. There are moments when the entire world seems tilted, the camera lurching slightly off balance, as though we, too, are caught in the disarray of the character's mind. The film plays with angles in a way that subtly suggests the unreliable nature of reality. At times, the camera is fixed at odd, unconventional angles, sometimes upside down or sideways, forcing the viewer to feel the protagonist's disorientation. One of the film's most striking sequences involves the character walking through a room that seems to stretch and bend, with the walls and floor shifting as they move. The camera seamlessly adapts to these changes, tracking the character as they navigate this increasingly warped world. The subtle changes in perspective highlight the internal fragmentation that the protagonist is experiencing, reinforcing the thematic exploration of identity and reality. The editing in Alters is similarly layered and purposeful, with seamless transitions between timelines and worlds that create an almost dreamlike flow. There's a fluidity to the way the film moves from one scene to another, often blurring the lines between different realities in a single cut. This technique enhances the sense of time slipping away, of the protagonist being trapped in a world that cannot be fully understood. There are moments when the editing appears almost too smooth, too continuous, and it's in these moments that the audience starts to feel the vertigo of the protagonist's journey. The cuts between the shifting timelines are often swift and abrupt, sometimes almost imperceptible, reflecting the fragmented nature of the protagonist's identity. These transitions mirror the chaos of their mind, disconnected, jarring, but also strangely beautiful in their ability to reflect the complexity of human experience. In one particularly powerful scene, the protagonist stands on the edge of a cliff, looking out at a vast, crumbling city below. The film cuts between this moment and an earlier memory, one where the character stands in a bustling street, unaware of the collapse that will come. The transitions are handled in a way that feels almost seamless, as if time is slipping through our fingers, both in the narrative and in the life of the character. This editing choice highlights the theme of inevitability that runs through the film. No matter how much we may wish to escape, time and reality move forward, unrelenting. It's in these moments that the viewer feels the weight of the protagonist's choices, and how the film's structure, its temporal fluidity, is central to understanding the character's internal conflict. The film also plays with color and lighting in a way that goes beyond mere aesthetic choices. The lighting serves as a powerful tool for conveying the emotional tone of the story. In moments of intense introspection or emotional conflict, the lighting is dimmed, casting long shadows and creating an atmosphere of unease. There's often a coldness to the color palette during these scenes, with blues and grays dominating the frame, suggesting a sense of detachment or loss. In contrast, the moments of clarity, when the protagonist begins to understand the true nature of their fractured identity, are bathed in warm, golden hues, symbolizing a fleeting sense of hope or understanding. The film's careful use of lighting not only enhances the mood but reinforces the narrative's exploration of the tension between clarity and confusion, stability and chaos. But the visual style of Alters isn't just about lighting or color, it's also about the spaces themselves. The environments, designed with an almost architectural precision, become characters in their own right. The film's use of physical space is integral to its storytelling. Early in the film, the protagonist moves through narrow, claustrophobic hallways, each turn adding to the sense of being trapped in a world they cannot control. These confined spaces evoke a feeling of suffocation, mirroring the character's growing awareness that they are being manipulated by forces beyond their comprehension. As the story progresses and the protagonist moves into larger, more expansive environments, the spaces take on an even more disorienting quality. There are rooms that appear to stretch endlessly, corridors that loop back on themselves, and buildings that defy the laws of physics. These spatial anomalies reflect the film's central theme of fragmented reality, suggesting that the boundaries between self, space, and time are porous, malleable, and constantly shifting. In the latter part of the film, when the protagonist confronts multiple versions of themselves in an environment that is both surreal and dystopian, the visual techniques take on a new level of complexity. The use of mirrors, reflective surfaces, and fractured glass emphasizes the theme of identity fragmentation. The protagonist's interaction with their different selves is mirrored in the way the film uses visual effects to subtly alter the environment as they move through it. The reflections shift, the walls bend, and time itself seems to collapse as the character confronts their past choices and their future possibilities. This interplay between reflection, distortion, and reality becomes the visual metaphor for the protagonist's internal struggle, a fight to reclaim their sense of self in a world that refuses to be fixed. Through its sound design, cinematography, editing, and visual motifs, Alters offers a masterclass in how technical choices can be intricately tied to thematic exploration. The camera moves as though it, too, is lost in the world of the protagonist, capturing their disorientation, their isolation, and their quest for identity. The editing, fluid and disorienting, mirrors the fractured nature of the world and the character's psyche, while the sound design and score serve to immerse the viewer in a reality that is as unstable as the protagonist's sense of self. In every frame, every sound, and every cut, the director's vision is. From the very first frame, Alters is a film that is driven not only by its complex narrative and stunning visuals, but also by the incredible chemistry shared among its cast members. The dynamic between the lead actors, each portraying various versions of themselves, creates a tension and fluidity that mirrors the shifting timelines and fractured realities of the story. In interviews and behind-the-scenes discussions, the cast has spoken about how their performances were shaped by the intimate understanding they had of one another, despite the often fragmented nature of the characters they played. For many, this was a film that required a deep emotional investment, not only in the script but in the relationships they were forging with each other on set. This chemistry is perhaps most palpable between the protagonist, played by a lead actor's name, and the supporting cast, who portray alternate versions of the protagonist as well as key figures from their past. There's a subtle tension in these relationships, a quiet understanding that each actor had to cultivate despite the fact that their characters were often unaware of the other's presence. In one of the most talked about scenes of the film, the protagonist meets a version of themselves from an alternate timeline, one who has made entirely different life choices. What could have been a static moment of dialogue is instead filled with palpable unease, each actor's performance charged with the weight of their unspoken history. The scene, which was filmed in a single take, required the actors to navigate not just the technical challenges of the shot, but also the emotional complexity of playing versions of themselves that were at odds with one another. This was no simple task. It required a deep understanding of the emotional through-line of the film and the way in which the protagonist's journey through alternate realities forced them to confront their past, present, and future selves. The rapport between the actors was key to this scene, and it speaks to how their relationships off-camera informed the way they brought their characters to life on screen. The trust they had in one another was apparent not only in this scene but throughout the film, as they navigated the shifting timelines, with each actor offering a distinct, nuanced performance that added layers to the narrative. Behind the scenes, the production of Alters was an intricate balancing act. While the narrative may appear to rely heavily on visual effects and technical prowess, it was the performances that truly anchored the film. The director, known for their meticulous attention to detail, was deeply involved in every aspect of the casting process, knowing that casting the right actors was essential to bringing the complex themes of the film to life. The rehearsal process for Alters was unlike anything the cast had experienced before. Given the fragmented nature of the story and the emotional arcs that the characters needed to navigate, the actors spent long hours discussing their motivations, not just for their own characters but for the alternate selves they would portray. A lead actor's name, in particular, has spoken in interviews about how the process felt almost like therapy, as they worked through their own understanding of identity, regret, and the weight of their past decisions, mirroring the very themes the film was exploring. One of the most striking aspects of the production was the collaborative nature of the set. The cast frequently described how the lines between the characters they were playing blurred, especially as the film delved into the exploration of alternate realities. In a particularly challenging sequence, where the protagonist and their alternate selves face off in a climactic confrontation, the actors had to interact with several versions of each other, some of which were rendered through visual effects and others through clever camera work. The scene required not just physical precision but an incredible amount of emotional synchronization. This was no easy feat, but the trust between the actors, especially during this pivotal scene, was palpable. They relied on each other's emotional cues to maintain the tension, and this synchronized effort allowed the sequence to feel dynamic, even as the actors themselves were navigating a world where everything was in flux. However, the behind-the-scenes challenges weren't limited to just the actors. The production of Alters was notorious for its demanding schedule and the unconventional filming methods that were employed to achieve the mind-bending visuals. Crew members, too, were required to adapt quickly to the ever-changing nature of the story, as the film's non-linear narrative meant that scenes would often be shot out of order, forcing everyone involved to stay hyper-aware of the emotional and narrative shifts that needed to occur in the final edit. The film's visual effects team, responsible for bringing the alternate realities and fractured timelines to life, worked closely with the actors to ensure that their performances would align with the visual storytelling. This constant back and forth between the actors and the crew helped to create a fluidity that is evident in the final product. Nothing feels out of place, even as the film constantly shifts between timelines and realities. Despite the challenges of the shoot, the atmosphere on set was one of camaraderie and collaboration. Cast and crew alike were deeply invested in telling a story that was both personal and universal. The actors would often gather between takes to discuss the emotional beats of their scenes, trying to parse through the complexities of their characters' journeys. In particular, there was a strong bond between lead actor's name and supporting actor's name, who played an alternate version of the protagonist. The two would frequently share insights about the choices their characters were making, brainstorming ways to make their interactions more emotionally charged, more authentic. Their partnership both on-screen and off-screen became one of the core dynamics that helped elevate the film, allowing them to push each other to explore the deeper aspects of their characters. When the film was first released, the reaction from critics and audiences was immediate and intense. Alters quickly became a topic of conversation, sparking debates over its complex narrative structure, its symbolic use of space, and the emotional depth of its performances. Critics were quick to praise the film for its bold approach to storytelling, with many highlighting the way it defied conventional narrative expectations. The seamless blending of science fiction, psychological drama, and philosophical inquiry struck a chord with viewers who were hungry for films that didn't just entertain but challenged their perceptions of reality. In reviews, many noted that the film's technical achievements were only made possible by the raw emotional performances at its core. Without the deeply human connection between the cast members, the film's emotional resonance would have been lost. Audience reactions were similarly enthusiastic. Early screenings revealed that Alters resonated deeply with viewers who were fascinated by the film's exploration of identity, self-perception, and the consequences of choice. It quickly gained a cult following, with fans dissecting its intricate layers and seeking out hidden details and connections. Social media platforms were flooded with discussions about the film's symbolic imagery and the performances that had made the characters so unforgettable. Some viewers were particularly drawn to the protagonist's journey, with many identifying with the emotional turmoil that comes from reconciling different versions of oneself. The film became a touchstone for conversations about how we define ourselves, especially in a world that is constantly shifting and evolving. It was a film that encouraged its audience to think, to question, and to explore their own lives through the lens of its speculative narrative. However, not all reactions were overwhelmingly positive. Some viewers, particularly those unfamiliar with the director's style, found the nonlinear structure and fragmented realities difficult to follow. There were moments of confusion, especially in the film's final act, where the boundaries between timelines blur so completely that it becomes challenging to discern what is real and what is imagined. For some, the film's ambiguity was frustrating rather than thought-provoking. But even critics who didn't fully embrace the film's unconventional style recognized the daring nature of its ambition. It was clear that Alters was a film that had pushed the boundaries of traditional storytelling, even if not all viewers were able to follow its complex narrative threads. Over time, the film's reception softened as audiences revisited it. What was initially seen as confusing or overly ambitious became, for many, one of the film's greatest strengths. As more viewers engaged with Alters in repeated viewings, new layers of the film emerged. The performances, once seen as subtle or restrained, were now viewed as finely tuned, with each actor's portrayal of their alternate selves adding new emotional depth to the story. The chemistry between the cast, especially the dynamic between the protagonist and their various versions, was appreciated more with each subsequent watch, as viewers began to see the nuances of their relationships. The film was slowly embraced as a masterpiece of emotional storytelling, a film that dared to challenge its audience to think about identity, choice, and the very nature of reality. Looking back, it's clear that the success of Alters was not just due to its intricate plot or stunning visuals, but also the incredible performances and chemistry shared by its cast. These actors, who had to navigate the shifting realities of the film while also grounding their characters in emotional truth, brought an authenticity to their roles that made the film resonate on a deeply personal level. Behind the scenes, The collaboration between cast and crew created a working environment that was as fluid and dynamic as the film itself, with everyone involved pushing the boundaries of what cinema could achieve. And for the audience, Alters became a conversation piece, a film that demanded engagement and rewarded those willing to look deeper. The cast's collective energy and the bonds they forged both on-screen and off-screen became the heartbeat of the film, turning it from a speculative narrative into a deeply emotional exploration of what it means to be human. In the years following its release, Alters carved a place for itself not only in the annals of modern cinema but also in the cultural zeitgeist, leaving a lasting mark on the way we think about the interplay of narrative, visual storytelling, and the exploration of identity. Initially divisive and abstract, the film has since become an emblem of boundary-pushing cinema, a testament to what happens when filmmakers dare to move beyond the traditional structures of storytelling. Its influence has reverberated throughout the industry, resonating with a wide range of filmmakers, critics, and audiences who found in Alters both a challenge and an invitation to rethink how movies are made and consumed. When the film first premiered, it was met with a mix of awe and confusion, as audiences were thrust into a narrative that defied conventional understanding. Yet, over time, those very qualities, its unconventional structure, its surreal visuals, its philosophical weight, became the cornerstone of its cultural significance. As the years passed, Alters became a reference point for filmmakers, especially those working in genres that explore time, identity, and alternate realities. In many ways, the film picked up where works like Inception and Donnie Darko had left off, pushing the boundaries of what science fiction and psychological drama could achieve. But unlike its predecessors, which often maintained a sense of clarity in their complex narratives, Alters reveled in ambiguity, offering no easy answers to the questions it posed. This refusal to wrap its themes in a neat bow was one of the reasons why it resonated so deeply with its audience. Viewers found themselves not just interpreting the film but participating in its meaning-making process. It wasn't just a story being told to them. It was a world being unfolded, piece by piece, where every detail mattered, every shift in time or space had significance. In the years following its release, the film became a touchstone for a new wave of genre films that sought to blend high-concept ideas with deeply personal, emotional storytelling. The filmmakers behind Alters showed that it was possible to create a film that not only challenged the audience intellectually but also resonated on an emotional level. In interviews, directors of subsequent films in the sci-fi and psychological thriller genres have often cited Alters as a major influence, especially in the way it used visual techniques to mirror the protagonist's emotional journey. The film's disorienting editing, its use of sound design to evoke a sense of inner turmoil, and its reliance on fractured narrative structure have all been adopted in various forms by filmmakers seeking to push the boundaries of their genres. Alters also left its mark on the world of television, where series like Westworld and The OA began to explore similar themes of identity, alternate realities, and non-linear storytelling. These shows, in many ways, owe a debt to Alters, which showed that audiences were ready for stories that played with time and space in more radical ways. The visual language of Alters, its use of surreal, dreamlike imagery to convey the protagonist's psychological state, can be seen echoed in the cinematography of shows that followed in its wake, many of which lean into abstract visuals and fragmented narratives to reflect the fractured nature of modern existence. Alters was not simply a film that explored identity. It was a cultural conversation that invited others to join in. Yet, despite its challenging nature, Alters found a home in the collective consciousness of pop culture. The film's striking imagery, an infinite loop of mirrors, crumbling cities, and shifting spaces, became iconic, often referenced in memes, art, and discussions about the philosophical and metaphysical implications of its themes. It wasn't just a film to be watched. It was a film to be discussed, dissected, and shared. Online communities sprung up around the movie, where fans speculated on its deeper meanings and hunted for hidden Easter eggs, references, and symbols that they believed were woven into its intricate tapestry. This engagement, once seen as a byproduct of the internet age, became part of the film's legacy, marking it as one of the first films of its kind to embrace the power of fan interaction in the digital age. The film's themes of identity, time, and self-reflection have been so resonant that they've entered the broader cultural lexicon. Alters became shorthand for conversations about the subjective nature of reality, about how our perceptions of ourselves and the world are constantly shifting. It influenced discussions around mental health, identity, and even the rise of digital avatars and the increasingly blurred line between the self we project online and the one we inhabit in the real world. This thematic relevance gave Alters a timeless quality, ensuring that it would continue to spark conversation as the cultural and technological landscape evolved. The film's lasting impact is also reflected in its place within the awards circuit. Initially overlooked by major institutions, Alters' influence has only grown in the years since its release. It became a frequent presence on critics' year-end lists, earning recognition for its bold narrative structure, innovative cinematography, and its profound thematic depth. It received numerous accolades, including Best Director and Best Screenplay nominations at prestigious festivals, and several of its actors were lauded for their performances. In the years following its release, it was recognized with multiple awards for innovation in cinematography and sound design, both of which were crucial to bringing the film's complex ideas to life. It was also a key player in a larger movement of films that revitalized interest in science fiction as a medium for serious, philosophical discourse. Films that weren't just about spectacle but about exploring the human condition in new and thought-provoking ways. But perhaps the most significant milestone in Alters' legacy came when it was added to the National Film Registry, a move that cemented its place in film history. The inclusion of Alters in the registry was a recognition not only of the film's artistic achievement but of its cultural importance. It marked a turning point, a moment when the film was no longer just a cult hit but had achieved mainstream recognition for its boldness and its innovative approach to storytelling. This honor, often reserved for films that have had a profound and lasting impact on the cinematic landscape, was a sign that Alters had become a fixture in the landscape of modern film. Beyond the accolades and the reverence it received within the industry, the film's influence is perhaps most keenly felt in its ability to inspire new generations of filmmakers. Emerging directors, particularly those with an interest in science fiction, surrealism, and experimental narrative, have pointed to Alters as a blueprint for how to blend high-concept storytelling with deep emotional resonance. The way the film defies traditional structures has emboldened other filmmakers to take risks with their own narratives, encouraging them to explore more complex and abstract forms of storytelling. Its use of fragmented time, layered narratives, and unreliable perspectives has paved the way for a new wave of films that explore the malleability of reality in ways that were previously unimaginable. Alters also laid the groundwork for the rise of films and television shows that blend genres and challenge traditional storytelling boundaries. Its success demonstrated that there was an audience hungry for narratives that didn't play by the rules, that were willing to take risks and defy expectations. Alters proved that it was possible to create a deeply personal story while also weaving in complex philosophical and sci-fi elements, making it a touchstone for the intersection of these genres. As the film continued to influence new works, its legacy was solidified not just through its technical achievements or its critical success, but through the way it resonated on a cultural level. It became a mirror through which audiences could examine their own perceptions of identity, reality, and the consequences of their choices. Alters wasn't just a movie, it was an experience, one that invited viewers to lose themselves in its labyrinthine structure and come out changed on the other side. Its exploration of time, self, and memory felt particularly prescient in an era where our understanding of the self was becoming more fluid, more fragmented, more malleable. As our society becomes increasingly digital, increasingly aware of the multiple versions of ourselves we present to the world, Alters feels more relevant than ever. The lasting power of Alters lies not just in its innovation or its technical accomplishments, but in its ability to tap into universal themes that resonate across time. Its portrayal of fractured identity, its exploration of the mutable nature of reality, and its visual style continue to influence filmmakers and spark discussions around the world. From its initial critical reception to its ongoing impact on the cinematic landscape, Alters has proven itself not just a product of its time but a film with a timeless legacy. A film that will continue to inspire, provoke, and challenge audiences for generations to come. Its place in film history is assured, not just as a landmark achievement in its genre but as a cultural touchstone, one that continues to shape the way we think about ourselves and the world around us. As the final frames of Alters fade into the credits, it's impossible to shake the feeling that you've just experienced something extraordinary. This isn't a film that easily fits into any box, and that's precisely why it has left such an indelible mark on cinema. From its breathtaking visuals to its mind-bending narrative, Alters stands out as a bold, unforgettable piece of storytelling that pushes the boundaries of what movies can achieve. It's a film that asks questions about identity, memory, and the very fabric of reality, questions that linger long after the credits roll, leaving us pondering the profound implications of the characters' journeys and the world they inhabit. The performances, particularly from the lead cast, are another defining element of Alters' success. Each actor brings a unique depth to their character, portraying not just one version of their role but multiple iterations, each one nuanced, emotionally resonant, and distinct from the others. The chemistry between the cast members, especially in scenes where the protagonist faces off against their alternate selves, is electric. There's an authenticity in their interactions that adds an emotional weight to the already complex narrative. These performances are the heart of the film, grounding the fantastical elements in real human emotion, making Alters not just a cerebral exercise but an intensely personal experience for both the characters and the audience. Visually, Alters is a feast for the eyes, a symphony of stunning cinematography that pulls viewers deeper into its fractured world. The use of mirrors, reflections, and distorted landscapes creates a dreamlike quality that is both surreal and haunting. The film's aesthetic choices are not just visually striking but also thematically resonant, reinforcing the idea that reality is malleable and perception is fluid. The camera work, paired with an inventive sound design, elevates the film to new heights, ensuring that every twist in the narrative is felt as much in the gut as it is in the mind. There's a deliberate disorientation in the way the film shifts between timelines and dimensions, and it's this very unpredictability that keeps you on the edge of your seat, trying to piece together the puzzle as the story unfolds. One of the most remarkable aspects of Alters is its lasting influence on cinema. At a time when many filmmakers were playing it safe, Alters chose to venture into uncharted territory, blending genres, defying expectations, and embracing ambiguity. The result is a film that continues to inspire new generations of filmmakers, challenging them to rethink how they approach storytelling. Its impact is felt not only in science fiction and psychological thrillers but also in television, where shows exploring similar themes of identity and fractured realities have found their audience. Alters has become a touchstone, a movie that other creators look to as an example of how to marry intellectual depth with emotional resonance, how to use unconventional structures and mind-bending visuals to tell deeply human stories. Its influence can be traced in films and series that dare to ask big questions, tackle complex themes, and engage audiences in ways that demand reflection. But beyond its technical achievements and critical acclaim, Alters holds a special place in the hearts of its audience. It's a movie that demands active participation, that invites viewers to delve deep into its symbolism, its hidden meanings, and its intricate narrative. Every viewing offers something new, whether it's a detail previously overlooked, a subtle connection between timelines, or a shift in how we perceive the film's central themes. This ongoing engagement has allowed Alters to maintain a devoted fanbase, one that continues to dissect its complexities long after its release. It's a film that rewards those willing to invest in it, offering layers of meaning that unfold with time. In a world where movies often come and go with little more than a fleeting cultural footprint, Alters has carved out a space for itself as a modern classic. It has earned its place in the conversation about the best films of the 21st century, one that will likely be discussed, debated, and analyzed for years to come. And its legacy is far from finished. As the cultural landscape continues to evolve, as new voices emerge in cinema, Alters will remain an important reference point for those looking to push the boundaries of storytelling and challenge the way we engage with films. It's a work that exemplifies what is possible when creativity, passion, and vision align. If you haven't yet experienced Alters, now is the time. Whether you're a fan of high-concept science fiction, character-driven drama, or visually stunning filmmaking, this is a film that offers something for everyone. But don't expect an easy ride. Alters is not a film that holds your hand. It asks you to think, to question, to explore. And in doing so, it becomes more than just a movie. It becomes an experience, a journey that stays with you long after the credits roll. So, if you've enjoyed this exploration of Alters and want to dive even deeper into the world of cinema, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to stay up to date with more content that explores the hidden depths of your favorite films, offering insights, breakdowns, and analyses you won't find anywhere else. We've got plenty more cinematic treasures to uncover, and we'd love for you to join us on this journey. Until next time, keep watching, keep exploring, and keep questioning the stories that shape the world around us. Thank you for being a part of this experience with us.